What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's happening with the economic calendar thus far, what you should be watching for in terms of earnings, and what the options chain is suggesting for SPY going into tomorrow. But before I begin these all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am firstly not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit $500 into the account, you are guaranteed 20 free stocks. If you deposit $25,000 or more, you're guaranteed 75 free stocks, and the offer ends very, very soon. Anyways, when looking at SPY, we got this absolutely parabolic move to the upside. We saw this thing run like crazy, and we managed to hit a high of 508.5. Now, I told everyone that if we ended up breaking 505.5, watch resistance around 507 to 507.5. And if we broke this, watch the next level at 508.5. And that's exactly where SPY ended up going to. But the question is this thing about to explode again, or is it about to get a massive rug pull and start tanking down to fill this gap? I'll give you guys some answers later on in this video. But let's first talk about some data and stuff. So I just want to say that tomorrow is going to be a very quiet day in terms of data. We pretty much have nothing coming out, no major Fed speakers or anything like that scheduled for tomorrow, which is Friday, February 23rd. So, with that being said, the data is not going to really affect the market much, and this gives the market more room to do what it wants to do. So, that's some good news, at least for us for the time being. But when it comes to earnings, that's a totally different story. So, for today, after the market closed, we just got Carvana's earnings. Overall, they did pretty poorly for earnings, at least in terms of like the Q4 report. But for their guidance, it was very, very strong, which is good news for them. And that's still helping the share price nonetheless. Now, I also want to call out that for Friday, before the market opens, we have Warner Bros. Discovery coming out. And that's pretty much it. Everything else is very minor to conclude this earnings week. But for Carvana, just to go over the numbers specifically, I'm going to be very quick with this. We were expecting a narrowed loss of 85 cents a share. They actually gave us a loss of $1 per share. So a little bit worse than expected. Their revenue is projected to fall 10% to 2.56 billion. It actually went down 15% in reality to 2.4 billion. So a little bit worse than expected, not the best of news for them. But looking at their outlook, this is what helped the share price still bounce. Basically, retail sales are expected to go up alongside the adjusted earnings before interest, taxes, and depreciation, etc. So basically, earnings before the other expenses, depreciation, and such were actually expected to be higher than expected, significantly above $100 million. And retail unit sales are slightly up in the current quarter from what they're seeing. So their outlook for Q1 is pretty strong, more than a $1,200 in adjusted. This right over here, that's their earnings before everything else. And that's some good news for them. That's actually higher than what they were expecting. So this is good news. And this is actually some pretty strong looking guidance for the next quarter coming up. So that's good news for them. And that's part of why the share price is still holding up despite having bad earnings. That's pretty ironic, pretty funny, anyways. When it comes to SPY, I just want to call out that we basically anticipated some very, very interesting developments in the options chain. We're seeing currently just a little bit over 770,000 puts expiring, and we have just under about uh, 380,000 calls expiring, a little bit less than that. So there's a 2.12 puts to call ratio. The majority of people have puts, and we're seeing the majority of the puts ending up out of the money. So this is leading to a big short squeeze. We're also seeing some puts being closed, and then we're seeing hedging, which is happening by institutions which start buying up the shares. So in my opinion, SPY is just parabolic. It's absolutely insane. And what helped trigger this is not just the buyers, of course, but Nvidia's earnings was used as the excuse or the catalyst to really pump the market. So they used Nvidia's earnings as a reason to do it. Nvidia led the way up and the market followed, and we saw big buyers stepping in and lots of money on the sidelines used to cause this to happen. So the question is SPY going to keep going? What do I see on the chart? Here's your answer. Looking at SPY, we look very bullish. This thing just broke up and up and up for the entire day, just pumped. At the very end, we came down by 1 point, and it's still holding 507.3 very, very well, which tells me that this is very strong. This hasn't reversed, and it's not coming down very hard. It's still holding up. So for SPY, make sure you watch support at 505.5 if we lose 507. And if we lose that, watch 503.5. For resistance, watch 508.5. If that breaks, I'm going to be looking for 510.5 and eventually 512 to 513.5. What do I think SPY is going to do? I think we might see a little drop in the morning, just like how it kind of dropped today before it bounced. We might see something similar tomorrow. It might drop a little bit, maybe touch 506, grab liquidity, trigger some stops. Then we might look for another push that's coming to 508.5. I think it's going to test this again. And there's a good chance it might try to break this and get up to at least 510. So I think it's going to push a little bit higher, and we could see 510.5 tomorrow. But then we'll have to see if it could hold there, because that's what's very tricky. I don't know where it's going to reject, so be very careful. I still think it could push a little higher from where we are, but make sure you watch resistance at 510.5, and we'll just go from there. So look for a little sell-off when we open, then a bounce. I think that's the most likely possibility, and we could start pushing upwards. That's going to be my view, my narrative. As long as we're above 505.5, I think that that's going to pan out, kind of like drop and bounce. If we end up losing 505.5, I could turn a bit more bearish and see this thing dropping a little more. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think it'll just retrace a little bit, rebound, and start pushing for that 510.5 area, and maybe even higher than that. So it still looks bullish, very parabolic, and Nvda was the perfect reason that these institutions used to squeeze shorts and continue to push the market higher. For the QQ, excuse me, guys, I apologize. For the QQQ, we're looking pretty bullish right now, hitting 438. We actually came a little bit below that, but overall we're holding up quite nicely. If we break this again, you're going to be watching 440 and eventually new all-time highs towards 442. That is absolutely insane. I do think that there's more potential upside coming for the triple Q. Now, I also want to call out that with the triple Q pumping like this, resistance is going to get tighter the higher we go. So be a little bit careful if this thing does attempt to push higher and higher. But here's the thing to be watching for. If we're bullish, you want to see it break out towards 440 and break that, then push up to these higher levels like 442 and 443.5. If we're bearish, you want to see it lose 436. If that fails, let's watch 434 and eventually the gap fill to 432. What do I think it's going to do? Just like SPY, it might retrace just a little bit, grab liquidity around 437.5, maybe a little bit lower. Then I think it's going to try to bounce and start pushing for 438. There's going to be one more attempt, and we might actually see 440 plus tomorrow. I think it might break out higher. I will maintain this view as long as we're above 436. If we lose 436, there's a bigger risk of this thing dropping a bit more. Otherwise, I'm still favoring the bulls a lot more. I'm still quite bullish. I think there's a very good chance this kind of like drops a bit and starts pushing even higher. So the trend is still super parabolic, super bullish. And when we see the market move this high, this fast, it's unlikely it's just going to crash the next day unless something happens. It's more likely that this thing is going to try to go higher. So watch your resistance just to be safe. For Nvda, this thing is continuing to soar even in the after hours, so it's still going to help the markets. I believe that Nvidia is going for at least 800. I think we're going to be testing 800. If we break that, we could be going all the way up to 807. That's going to be our next target. Then 812 based off psychological levels. 812.5 is next. If we break that, 820 is coming next, and 825. These are just some levels I had calculated based off Fibonacci extension tools and other things like that. I memorized them. So for Nvidia, if we do retrace and we reject off 800, it could retrace to about 790. If that fails, let's watch 782. But if we break 800, we're going to be looking at these higher levels. Right now, it looks bullish. Why is it bullish? Just look at it, right? Higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high. It's still pushing. It wants to keep going. There's no sign of it stopping yet. So I have to presume it's going to try to keep going to 800 plus. So if that's the case, that's going to be bullish for SPY and the QQQ. It is still going. It's not done yet. Nvidia could break 800 and hit 807 and 812 very soon. Aapl looks bullish to me. We're respecting a nice uptrend. This is forming a big cup, in my opinion. I think that Aapl might start off, might drop a little bit, grab liquidity again, retest 183.8 or so, maybe a little lower. Then I think it's going to bounce and start pushing for that 185 area. I think it's going to retest 185 and possibly get up to 185.5. It could be forming a giant cup, so watch for it to try to push a little bit higher. So we're going to be looking to see if this ends up being the case. There's also the possibility that this is forming like an inverse head and shoulders. So this could be either like a cup and handle that's forming, or this could be like an inverse head and shoulders. We have like this head right here. We have the left shoulder here, the head forming, maybe like a right shoulder later. But we have more upside coming before we end up doing that. So I just want to call that out on Aapl. To turn bearish on Aapl, you want to see it lose 183.5 and then 182.5. Today we did test this, but then we bounced off 182.5 to a T. So you could see how close these levels are to the levels I have marked right over here. Look how well it bounced off 182.5. Look at how it was testing 184 as resistance. it's working very well. So with this 185 resistance, I think Apple's going to attempt to break it, might drop a little bit and then start pushing for 185 to 185.5. So look for a little bit more upside and see how it reacts to that. And then finally, we have the one and only Tesla. How is Tesla doing? Unfortunately, Tesla was not as strong as it could have been. That's because we had some bad news come out, right? We had some news involving the Giga Berlin that was a little negative. And then we also had, from what I remember, the Ford Mach-E cutting prices, leading to more bearish sentiment for EVs. So Tesla got this sell-off, and then it rebounded with the market. So it wants to play a game of keep up, but it's relatively weak because of all this negative news. Now, one thing worth noting is that Tesla is respecting a potential bullish wedge-like formation, but we're going to be watching our levels just to be safe. So if Tesla loses 195, we could sink to 192.5 then 190. And if we break out above 200, you're going to be looking for an attempt to get back up to 205. Now, this looks like it's uptrending. It is trying to uptrend. It could be even trying to form like a bullish wedge, but it's not as clean. I think Tesla's going to retrace in the morning. Again, grab liquidity somewhere around 195, maybe a little lower, then bounce and try to respect this trend line, make our way up towards 200 very slowly. I think Tesla might be a little slow, but we might see more upside next week so long as we hold our levels. And I think that we might slowly approach the 200 target. So I'm seeing some life on Tesla. So that's it for Tesla and the main five I typically go over. Let's go over more tickers for now. For the people interested in NEO, the reason why this was red and didn't bounce with the market is because we had bad news. JP Morgan Chase cut their price target to $5. For Rivian, this thing got a big sell-off after earnings. We're going to be watching 11 so far. If we lose this, it's going to be sinking towards 10. So it's still looking kind of weak. Let's see if it bases right there. SoFi, we're very tight right now. I could see this attempts to retest 8.23, then just trade sideways, but it's basically range bound between 8.09 and about 8.4. Been going back and forth and back and forth. It might just continue to do so. But I do see it potentially trying to rebound towards 8.28, then just trade sideways. Not much is going on with SoFi, not too fun to trade. ARM, it looks like it's going to retest our 20 EMA, 126.77. If we do lose this, if we continue to sink below this, we could see this retrace towards 125 again. We'll see if it bounces or not. But watch 125 and see if we can try to bounce. If we fail to bounce there, then 120 is coming. So be a little bit careful with this. I do see it dropping a little bit more, but wait and see if we could get a bounce or not. For Super Micro, this thing is on fire. You guys can see this thing is currently getting very close to that 1,000 level. It might retrace a little bit. We could open closer to about 950 or so, but then you could see this push towards this imbalance at 1040 around there. I do think it has a little bit more room to go. It could push a bit higher, so watch and see how it does. Also watch the 1080 area. If we do end up breaking that, we'll see how it goes, but so far so good. For Palantir, this is going to be testing support at 23.28. If we lose that, we're going to be sinking towards this imbalance at 22.75. If we bounce off this, we could push for 24 again, but right now it's showing a little bit of weakness relative to the market. So just be a little bit careful with Palantir. We also have this gap below. So watch it. It does look like it's going to retrace a little bit more, but we'll see if it bounces off the low 23 area or not. So watch that carefully. For the IWM Russell 2000, we look bullish. We're nearing a bullish cross in the PPO, which it's showing some life. It's kind of like a late runner. I think it's going to be testing 200. And if that breaks, 202 is coming. So it looks like it has more room for upside. It's not as strong or parabolic as the others out there because it's mainly impacted by like the smaller caps. So we'll see how that does. Carvana is up like crazy. Strong guidance despite bad earnings. I think it could push a little bit more tomorrow. Going to be looking to see how well it could hold above 60. So watch that. And if it does, we could be pushing for 68 again. Microsoft on the 4-hour time frame is looking bullish. We're going to be looking to see how well Microsoft could hold and try to break 412. If we do break this, then we're going to be looking for 415. If it fails to break that, it could retrace. Tomorrow, it might retrace towards 409, and we'll see if it holds there, because if it bounces, we're going to be pushing up towards like 412 and 415 again. If we lose 409, we could be sinking for 406. I think it will retrace to 409, and we'll see if it bounces. It might still bounce and push up higher. It still has potential to do so, so just watch that carefully. Shopify was relatively weak because of bad news. If we lose 74, I do see this wedge panning out, and we could be sinking all the way down to 72.5 and 70 flat. So be a little bit careful with Shopify. It does have a bearish looking formation right here. It's a little bit weak because of bad news, so we'll see how it does. In order to turn bullish, you want to see it break 76 and then push up to 78. Otherwise, it might just continue to downtrend. It is looking a little bearish to me. For AMD, This is looking bullish thanks to Nvda. It just reached 184, and I was talking about that level earlier today. It might retrace towards 178. It could actually retrace just a little bit, maybe a little higher than that 180 to 178. Then look for a bounce towards 185 after that. It still has life, in my opinion. For the VIX, this thing is down pretty big, about to get a bearish cross in the PPO. Watch 14.02. If we lose this on the VIX, this thing is going to be sinking more. And we have this other gap down here, which hasn't been filled. So we're going to be looking for this gap to get filled down here if we do lose 14 towards 13.05. If that is the case and we're about to do so, this could mean that the market's going to pump higher and cause that to happen. So we'll just have to wait and see. For the dollar index, okay, this thing, it's kind of rejecting off the 20 EMA. I could see this actually testing 103.76. So I could see a little retracement here, which is kind of bullish for the markets, but we'll have to see how well it holds or if it breaks above the 200 or not. For Coinbase, we got a nice bounce. We have to see if we could try to hold above 168. If we hold above this, look for a push for 175 and eventually 180. If we break below 168, it's going to be sinking down towards 165ish around there. 164ish, excuse me, around there. So watch that carefully. I do think it might try to hold. It is looking a little bullish, but it's not as convincing above the 20 yet. I have to give it more time. So we'll see. It does look like it could push a bit more, but just to be safe, I'll wait. Google's not looking that great. So it tried to break out. Now it's just trading sideways. If it loses 144, we're going to be sinking to 142. If we hold above it, we could try to push for 146. But right now it looks kind of range bound. So we'll have to see which way it breaks. Do we break above 146 to push to 148? Or do we end up losing 144 to start sinking to 142? We'll just have to wait and see. For Amazon, Amazon's looking kind of bullish right now. We'll just have to see if this thing could break out or not. I think it might retest 173.5 and then bounce off that to push for 175. And if we break past 175, we're going to be looking for a push for 178. So it looks bullish. It might retrace a bit and try pushing for 175 plus, but then we'll see how well it holds from here. It's been pushing very nicely. It does have more potential, but wait and see. For Meta is retracing a bit. It could retest 483 and then bounce, but we have to see if we could hold 483. If we hold 483, look for a bounce back up to 490 and possibly even 495. If we lose 483, we're going to be sinking for about 476 again. So we'll see if it bounces off this support. I'll be watching that carefully. It's going to retrace a little bit, but we'll see if it bounces or not. It does look like it could bounce because the trend is bullish, but just to be safe, we'll wait and see. So that being said, SPY is back to green in the after hours. SPY is still very strong, guys. I would not say it's going to crash from here, no matter what people on YouTube try to say. A lot of people on YouTube are saying Nvidia is going to crash after earnings. Nvidia is going to tank. I was the person that told you that, hey, we don't know what's going to happen. Let's wait and see. And if Nvidia were to run, okay, I told you guys that wouldn't surprise me. And if it did run, the whole market is going to follow it. And that's exactly what happened. There were a couple of exceptions. Tesla did technically run at the end of the day, but it was a little bit weaker than it could have been. And that's because of bad news. That always happens. That can happen to any stock. But for the most part, the market did run. We got a very, very big move. And we may see a continuation tomorrow, but be a little bit more careful, a little bit more wary of the next resistance levels as we're still breaking to new all-time highs. And we'll see how it goes. But just to be clear, guys, this is a lesson to take away. Always be prepared for big data and be prepared for anything a lot of the time. Do not always expect the unexpected. Sometimes, people will expect moves like this, sometimes not. So it's good to be reactive and it's good to be very, very open-minded and humble, and just know that it's always important to manage risks on big events like these. So the market has more potential. We'll see how it goes. Watch your resistance levels, and I'll see you guys very soon on the next one. Thank you for listening. Have a great day. Enjoy the evening, guys, and I'll see you guys very soon. Thank you and peace out.